Good morning, everybody. Oh, it looks like we don't have the right people here, Lori.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Rick's not able to be with us this morning. He sends us greetings and regrets, but I'm Lori Coburn, Vice President of Information Technology with MetroList Services.
And I'm Jay Pepper-Martens, the CTO at SFAR. And Lori and I, it feels like we've been doing data mapping for 20 years. I used to work at Point 2, and you've been doing that with MetroList for about as long, right?
Absolutely.
Just the RESO antitrust policy quickly. We're a group of MLSs that operate in the Bay Area. We cooperate, but we compete. It's co-opetition, and so we felt it important to restate the antitrust policy.
So ReCal is a group of 3 MLSs in Northern California. They've been working together to resolve the overlapping market disorder in our area. We've been working together for over 20 years trying to make it better for our users. But how can this work? We're 3 separate entities with 3 separate data schemas going on and 3 separate ownership and governance models. One is association owned, one is broker owned, and one of us is a hybrid of both of those.
So it's not just technical considerations that we have to overcome, it's also governance and management, things that we have to sort of sort out.
But our users were having an age-old problem. And prior to 2007, there was no Datashare, there was no SSO, and that created kind of a walled-off garden effect that our users had. They had to join multiple MLSs, search multiple places, run dissimilar reports, causing multiple subscription fees, separate logins. It goes on and on.
So in April 2007, the first phase was called Quattro.
Right, and that was the culmination of our first efforts. Quattro came out. It was Northern California's first reciprocal system access program. We had a massive undertaking to try to get the mapping of all those disparate systems into one that our users could SSO into and do a combined data search. It started out with the first 3 ReCal partners, and then we expanded to include some other MLSs within our ReCal Alliance group. The system worked and was great for some things. It facilitated. The compensation was cooperated across borders. We were able to SSO between dissimilar MLS systems, but it also created some additional problems. One being that search database pool had duplication problems. Our MLS staff was faced with continuous explain and train and on complicated uses. Our members struggled in understanding. And then the Quattro system itself that we SSO'd into had to be dumbed down to the lowest common denominator because there was a lack of common interchange of language.
Right, so we started with some new conversations in 2016. We sat down and said, that was great, but it had those shortcomings and we wanted to see if we could overcome them. So what were those shortcomings and how could we address them? So we knew the system had to be easy. Whatever we were gonna build had to be really simple because the explain and train problem was huge. You know, you're always picking up the phone, trying to explain to someone why they have to switch between systems. We knew it needed to be seamless, that experience of it looks different and I don't understand why, it's a completely different MLS vendor system. We had to get rid of that. And the thing had to work almost instantaneously. One of the problems we had with a search database pool was update delay. Things like the listing data would be synchronized, but the photos would take an extra day to get there, and that couldn't work like that. We also had some items on a do not do list. We knew that we couldn't just implement a single monolithic database. The problem with a single monolithic database is that now when one of us needs to add something, all of us need to add something to the same thing, and all of our user interfaces have to be identical, and we didn't want to do that. We also knew that we needed to maintain MLS autonomy. The companies needed to stay separate because they had different governance models. I mean, yours is literally partly owned by brokers and partly owned by the association.
Correct.
So we had to support all those different kinds of models. And lastly, we wanted someone local to pick up the phone when there was a problem. So if a MetroList member had an issue with a listing, they phoned their home MLS system and they got a MetroList technician or support person that helped them through it. It couldn't just be a call to someone 1,000 miles away. So how are we going to make all that work? Well, thankfully, the Real Estate Standards Organization had been building this thing called the Data Dictionary for over a decade. And so instead of thinking about it as something we had to map data to go out, we flipped it upside down and said, what would an MLS system look like if you rebuilt the database with the Data Dictionary in the core? So we used the Data Dictionary to rebuild our primary schema. We used Web API to make our MLS systems all communicate with each other in real time so we could get away from doing a bunch of batch jobs. We didn't want that delay, we didn't want the photo delay, we didn't want the update delay, and we had to still support RETS 1X, which we do, but it allows us to keep our own system with this model. I'm never going to be able to forget these 8 Excel spreadsheets. We spent 2 years mapping data into spreadsheets. I appreciate everything Paul had to say about putting data in blobs, and hopefully those can be pages of documents. We'll have highly indexed fields and then blobs later, but today that wasn't available to us. So we mapped everything back from our existing MLS systems into what the data dictionary said they should be, not just for San Francisco's amenity codes and category codes and feature codes, but also for Barry's, who's here today, MetroList, San Francisco. All of us had to map back into these fields.
And again, that was a massive undertaking, a lot of hours and a lot of pain. But this time we had a little bit of extra help because we had determined that we were going to make our UI RESO compliant. So now there was no bickering back and forth of, no, our users are used to calling it this. No, my users call it this. RESO calls it that. That's what we're going to call it. And so it made it a lot easier on that mapping and the way to go through.
We rebuilt our user interfaces to meet what our local market demands were. San Francisco's UI looks its way, the Barry's one looks like it has to look, and the MetroList one looks appropriate for its. Also, it's important to note that the data dictionary might be a list of fields and values, but what it doesn't really have is what triggers what. If this is set to yes, does that trigger something else? If this value has 30 things you can select in it, can you select all 30? Can you only select 4? So each of us still needed to maintain our own business logic layers. And then of course, persistence. And maybe it's a relational database today, but it could be anything tomorrow. And because we have our own user interfaces, we're able to support local fields, some of which maybe aren't in the data dictionary. For example, on the left, I've got San Francisco's parking, and on the right, I've got Lori's, I think it's topography with snow line.
Yep.
So what's that experience like for our members now that we've built this? A San Francisco member logs into the San Francisco MLS, but maybe they take a listing in Marin County, which is part of Barry's. So what they see is the Marin County specific listing input fields following that business logic that's appropriate from the Barry's MLS system. And when they're done creating the listing, it's written automatically into all of the databases that are part of the system.
And so we have the Barry's user trying to add a listing into San Francisco, and you got some crazy parking fields.
It's true. Parking in San Francisco is a nightmare for anyone who's been there. This is a Barry's member taking a listing in South of Market. And in South of Market, a parking space can make a difference of $100,000, $150,000, whether or not it comes with one or not. It comes with 2 parking spaces, $300,000, $400,000 price difference. So now the Barry's member needs to see all of this garbage, which is the hyper-specific information we need to know in San Francisco. Are those parking spaces actually tied to the listing? Are they mapped, or are they sort of like loosey-goosey? So we make sure that the Barry's member fills out this information, which for us is required in the city. That data writes back into the database, which then synchronizes across all the systems.
Right, so we all see those in our system, but when my users are adding a listing in our area, we don't see those fields because I'm in Sacramento and it's how big is your lot? That's how many cars you can park on it. I mean, it's very different.
Right.
So, but what this unique technology does for us is it allows us to have our own system and to keep our own autonomy and our local market. It allows us to be able to create reports for our users that they're used to seeing, customized for them. They can be different across systems. We can have different integrated apps, such as CMA programs that we use for MetroList, and Barris in San Francisco don't have to use it. So we can be different and unique, allowing our users to be able to see all the combined data, but yet in a system that they're used to looking at.
And that's really the magic, is that Lori's members see all that San Francisco data in the reports the way they like them to look, so that they can access all the information from all the systems, but they don't have to figure out why is this block of data above or below something they're used to looking at. It just simplifies training. It simplifies everything to do with support for our own members.
Absolutely. So again, a listing agent in San Francisco takes a property in Barris, or the Marin County, which is the Barris. They use the Barris listing input module. It is available for that MetroList user now to be able to see and make a purchase offer on it. And all of them can do that within staying in their own systems that they are used to looking at and being familiar with.
Yeah, no one has to leave their home system ever. And this is all really achieved with this sort of magical listing input engine that Rapatoni's helped us build, where based on the county that you are entering the data for, you see the appropriate fields and business rules for that location to make sure you're compliant. And then it writes the data simultaneously and instantly to all the databases that are part of the partnership.
In addition to the ReCal partners having this real-time sync, we're also able to continue the data share that we've had enjoyed over the last several years with the NorCal Alliance group. And you saw pictures of that earlier as Olga was talking. We all are still able to see that data. This time the difference is, instead of having a separate system our users go into to get that combined data, we've used the data dictionary to map their data into our primary system. So it's all in our own home systems.
That's right, and it's bring whatever MLS system you want. The three of us at the top happen to be Rapatoni MLSs, so we have separate MLS systems that have a common data backbone. In the East Bay, you can see a number of organizations collaborating on a system that they all share and manage together, and then MLS Listings is a single MLS corporation that has one system that they manage. Maybe it's a couple under the hood, but we synchronize data between these three nodes in sort of like a giant MLS network. And what we achieve is that we've got home MLS of choice. If you're an agent anywhere in those counties, you can pick which association and MLS you want to be a part of. You don't have to join many of them. You just have to pick the one you want. It's got a fast, rich, really instantaneous data share, so you can see the data in real time, and you've still got MLS and association independence. No one has to merge corporations or change their business models if they don't want to.
Right, and we can continue and expand into the future. If you're a Rapatoni system, you could join the ReCal group and have that real-time sync with us.
And if you're not, like I said, you can bring your own MLS system. We'll connect to it with a fast, rich data share on the outside. We'll do reciprocal data share so your members don't have to SSO into our system. And of course, we won't SSO into yours. We'll just take all the data and show it to our members.
So thank you for your time.
Thanks, guys. Thanks very much.